Next week's programme, the last of the series, features that complete performance of Mahler's 10th Symphony in the edition by Derek Cook. That's at 8:20 next Saturday evening. Tomorrow, Journey into the Shadows stars Anna Massey as painter Gwen John.
I don't get much time. I'm modelling every day now.
I know it pays the rent, but you really mustn't stop painting. Are you still modelling for that bossy woman you wrote to me about?
No, for Rodin.
I had such pleasures with you today. At such moments it seems to me that I'm a different girl. All my shyness falls away. My happiness gives me courage. It seems to me that the greatest imaginable happiness would be to be the little servant of the person one loves, and never to go out, to be sheltered and hidden from the world. Perhaps I will be able to do something good, and will be able to be one day nearer to you because of it.
The Passionate Recluse's Journey into the Shadows stars Anna Massey tomorrow at 9:10. Well, now on to the current arts world as discussed and commented on in our Saturday Review, which this week features books, films, photos and rock videos.
Do you suffer from the unbearable lightness of being? Do you hate rock and roll? How many images of Britain can Britain's image stand?
This week we'll be looking at a new novel by the Czech exile, Milan Kundera. It's called The Unbearable Lightness of Being, and it's causing a lot of reverential excitement. We've also chosen last Monday's Channel 4 film, Through an Unknown Land, and a new exhibition of photographs by Don McCullin, among others, of Britain in 1984. With us to discuss them are Peter Stern, literary critic and professor of German at London University, who, like Milan Kundera, is Czech by birth, Jana Bokova, also Czech by birth, who's often on television as a voice out of vision in her distinctive documentary films, such as Living Room and Sunset People, and Lindsay Anderson, director of many well-known plays and films, including If and Britannia Hospital, which was recently shown on television.
First, the new novel by the Czech writer Milan Kundera, published by Faber under the title The Unbearable Lightness of Being, and we'll come to that title in a minute. Kundera, who is in his mid-50s, has been in the West since 1975. He lives in France, and as his work is banned by the Communist Party in Czechoslovakia, he writes primarily for translation into French and subsequently into other languages. So he faces all the problems of addressing an international audience, one of which is that anything he says is taken to be a contribution to the war of words between East and West. However, at least some of the unbearable lightness of being has to be taken that way, as this sympathetic reading by Michael Bryant from last week's Arena shows.
A year or two after emigrating, she happened to be in Paris on the anniversary of the Russian invasion of her country. A protest march had been scheduled, and she felt driven to take part. Fists raised high, the young Frenchman shouted out slogans condemning Soviet imperialism. She liked the slogans, but to her surprise, she found herself unable to shout along with them. She lasted no more than a few minutes in the parade. When she told her French friends about it, they were amazed. "You mean you don't want to fight the occupation of your country?" She would have liked to tell them that behind communism, fascism, behind all occupations and invasions, lurks a more basic, pervasive evil, and that the image of that evil was a parade of people marching by with raised fists and shouting identical syllables in unison. But she knew she would never be able to make them understand. Embarrassed, she changed the subject.
The novel covers several years' events, but concentrates on 1968, the year of the Russian invasion of Czechoslovakia. Tomáš, the central character, is a doctor who writes a politically unacceptable article and is downgraded by the regime until he finally becomes a window cleaner. This much is rather reminiscent of Kundera's first novel, The Joke, in which a postcard bearing the jocular message, "Long live Trotsky," involves its sender in similar trouble. But Tomáš is also a compulsive womanizer, and through two of his women in particular, Teresa and Sabina, Kundera discusses, in fairly unvarnished philosophical terms, the opposing claims of soul and body, sex and love, guilt and narcissism, and so on. So what is this unbearable lightness of being supposed to be? Well, the book identifies it with the idea of eternal return postulated by Nietzsche. But since Nietzsche is a name that makes English readers run away and hide in cupboards, it was probably wisest to ask Kundera himself. Hermione Lee, on last Sunday's Book 4, obtained the best answer.
On dit toujours que la vie est dure et que son malheur consiste dans le fait que la vie est un lourd fardeau que nous portons jusqu'à notre mort. C'est, disons, l'image cliché le plus courant, la métaphore la plus courante qui veut décrire la difficulté de vivre. Mais on peut aussi renverser la chose et dire, est-ce que le malheur de la vie ne consiste pas au contraire dans l'immense légèreté de la vie, c'est-à-dire dans le fait que chaque nos gestes, chaque notre parole disparaît tout de suite, est tout de suite oublié, ne signifie en fin de compte rien, n'a pas de conséquences, et que nous quittons cette terre sans y laisser aucune trace.
Well, Peter Stern, a lot of fuss about Kundera all of a sudden. We are part of it. Is it worth it?
Well, I think it's worth it, but I think one's got to judge the book for what it is really trying to do. It seemed to me very characteristic of the reviews that it received that the story itself was privatized, made into a love story, made into a story of personal conflicts. To my way of thinking, it's primarily a novel to do with the way in which people live within a totally political society, and in which no private reactions are really possible without some kind of echo, some kind of reflection within that society. And I think that the privatization of that metaphor of dark and light, and of weight and lightness, all that seems to me essentially trying to tie it up with the political situation in which commitment, that is to say the kind of thing that Sartre talked about in '68, is regarded as weighty, substantial, feet on the ground, all that kind of thing, whereas the supposed freedom of the imagination, of the personality, sexual freedom, and all these things stand on the other side as being fickle, unstable, uncommitted.
That sounds as if one's reaction to the book ought to be sort of more public than private. Is that how you found it, Jana?
Well, not at all. Actually, just the opposite. I was completely taken on the private level, which took me in, which introduced me into political or public level, which is in the book very elaborate, which I think might cause a problem a little bit here, because it's not easy book to read, although I have to tell you that I read it very slowly in French. I prefer to read in French, but it took me 3 weeks, not because of the fact that I couldn't get on with it, but it's something which you can't read quickly. And I think you have to take it in bits and pieces, but at the same time, all those 3 weeks I was completely, instead of Kundera trip, and I changed into a different person, and my friends were saying, but what's the matter with you? And I said, leave me alone, I'm reading this book. I was really completely taken in, but on private level, which created access to the political or public one.
It's a novel of ideas all the time. Do you take naturally to novels of ideas, Lindsay Anderson?
Well, I do like, for instance, I like the perspective of the novel very much. I do like the relationship of, very un-English kind of relationship, the relationship of the lives, feelings, fortunes of its characters with the moments of history in which they find themselves and by which they are victimized. And I think that's entirely true to our time. And I think it's a blessed relief from the narrow perspective of many English novels. And I find very refreshing the irony and seriousness of the book compared with the rather facetious style that is that of many English writers. There's a kind of alienation about the book and a pervasive intellectualism, and I have to admit that it makes me feel quite stupid at times, because some of the ideas and the paradoxes in it I absolutely don't understand. And I don't understand really quite about the lightness of being, or the notion of the